Hello, Amanda. So, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to do a form review for you. I appreciate it. And as I mentioned to you, just for the live studio audience that doesn't exist, um, Amanda is currently throwing 300 feet on average, playing FA1, and interested in moving up to FPO next year. So that's awesome. As I mentioned, there is very little female representation on my channel, which personally I think sucks. And I think all the dudes involved in the sport need to be doing everything they can to get more of the lady folk involved and coming out and playing with us. So thank you for helping me make a small push to support women in playing the sport and asking for form reviews. Very awesome of you. So let's jump into your throw. So you posted 3 videos, and honestly, I can't tell them apart if I'm not looking at where your feet are on the pad to tell which throw is what. So your throw is very consistent. That's very good. You also have an advantage on all of your male counterparts, that it seems like you were attacking this problem of how to throw a disc far with a very calculated, precise method, in that all your throws are very consistent and you're not doing the standard dude thing of just muscling your shoulder over as hard as you can, which works to a point, but guys tend to cap out because of that limitation. So you are going to breeze past them in that regard, and that's excellent and exciting. So let's jump into the specifics. I'm going to go quickly through the things that I noticed about your form that I want to see change. And if you want more detail on those, honestly, just go watch any other review I've done for anyone else, and the same issues will come up. And you can get more robust explanations of why they're wrong from those other videos. But I want to focus with you on giving you a roadmap to how to make changes. So I picked out 5 things that I see that are going to help you the most if you change them. So let's jump into it. So the first one is reach back timing. So what I'm going to do is well, first let's let the live studio audience see your whole throw. So really calculated, really controlled. I really like that. That's the hardest thing to teach people. So you've got the hard part down. You obviously have some kind of an athletic background because you're moving very well. But there's a couple of very specific disc golf backhand things that are super unintuitive that just no one's showed you yet. So you don't know how to get those working. So we'll start with the reach back. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to clicky pausey method until I find your peak reach back. So right about there, your elbow is done extending. Let me grab my draw tool thing for all the fancies. Your elbow is about done extending. The disc just did a little pop, which is your wrist. What's that? Extending, not flexing. So you're the back of your hand coming towards the camera. So I'll wind back so we can see that again. So watch the disc. It's going to pop towards the camera. Boop, right there. And then your arm starts going forward right after that. So we'll get back to that point. That was too late. So there, we'll call that peak extension. And your toe is not on the ground yet. So what we actually want is not only your toe firmly planted when the disc hits peak reach back, but we actually want your heel to be firmly grounded by the time that little pop sends the disc towards the camera. So that pop shouldn't exist unless your heel is causing it. So when the heel hits the ground, the leg extends more to start stopping the motion in the front hip. And that spin coming up your spine should be what starts pulling the disc forward. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, so let's flip over to demo mode and I'll show you what I mean and how to make a change. Okay, so what you're doing is you're getting to your peak reach back position while your toe is still floating. So that little boop where the disc moves towards the camera and your elbow is done extending is happening here with your foot floating. So I want you to imagine that your arm is 20 feet long and you're just going to reach back and reach back and reach back and reach back and reach back until forever. And the only thing that makes the reach back stop happening is that your heel hits and jerks the disc forward. So it's this stopping this, causing turn that makes your arm stop reaching back. So because the reason for this is you want this motion, the powerful motion in your hips, to be what starts the movement, and then your arm is layering on top of that. So your hips need to be in motion. Your shoulders will actually start twisting at the same time. So there's a hip twist happening. It's not a this hip twist. It's a your heel goes down and then this leg extends and moves your hip backwards. That's kind of a more advanced thing, but we'll get into that maybe next round. Don't worry about that too much for now. I just want you to have a complete picture of the throw in your head. So the front leg stops the front hip. Rear hip continues moving forward. That hip twist is what forms the power basis of your throw. And then on top of that is layered the shoulders. So we start with our hips turned back about 45 degrees and our shoulders turned back maybe 90 degrees, maybe more if we're really flexible. But the shoulder rotation starts at about the same time as the hip rotation. It's just that the shoulders have catching up to do so that everything comes forward together. So the hips are layer 1, the shoulders and the spine twist is layer 2, and then layer 3 is the arm pulling on top of that. There is a pull. It's not usually useful to think of it as very active as a beginner or intermediate player. But then when you get into more advanced distances like 350 or 400, you do need to start thinking about a more active pull and specifically pulling the disc into a deep pocket, which again, we'll go over that next round, if not next round, because we got some bigger form issues to figure. So reach back timing, you want peak to happen when your heel comes down. Almost no one gets it that late who's not a pro. But look at overthrows footage of Drew Gibson throwing and look at his timing. He reaches back here and then pops. Look at that pop relative to his plant. And you're going to find that it's when his heel comes down that he's really hitting max extension. So that's the first point. But how the heck do we change it? It's really hard, first of all. But the easiest way that I have found to help people change the timing is adding a pump to their walk up. And you have one. I just want to make it longer and delay it. So the new rule is the disc goes forward. Oh, I need my fill light on. What am I doing? Rookie of the Year award. Oh, it's not even plugged in. Cool. Go in dark mode. So pump. The disc goes forward as your X step goes forward. Is that right? Yes, that's right. So maybe too much, but think about making your X step as small as you can for now while we're learning this new brace mechanic that we're going to go over next. 2 more things in the future. So the pump happens as the X step is going forward, the disc is going forward. And I want you to end up all the way up here. It's going to feel awkward as all heck at first, but that's good. Awkward means you're changing something. You're doing something different than your existing muscle memory. So just lean into that awkwardness and commit to the idea of, I'm going to start my throw from here. So this is your new timestamp of start. And then when the X step is finished, now the disc will follow this foot, your plant foot, and they're going to go opposite. So as the plant foot is moving forward, the disc is moving backwards, and then you only get to peak as the heel comes down, and you really shift all of the weight into the front foot. So that's reach back timing. And next point is we're going to add an offset to your feet. So part of the reason you're kind of capping out at 300 is not because you're doing anything wrong, but you haven't optimized your swing plane yet. So what I mean is look at your shoulders. They're flat, and then they're flat besides your front shoulder being hunched, which is, this will fix that as well. And then on your follow through, they're flat again. So you have a flat shoulder plane, is how I would describe that. And when your shoulder plane is flat, your hip plane is flat. And when your hip plane is flat, you can't brace well because biomechanically you just can't. There's no way to get your weight down behind your front hip. So what we're going to do to change that is we're going to take this foot placement from here and we're going to move it about like a tile over. So your heel is going to be here and your toe is going to be here. So kind of this line hits your toe and then it's going to hit your heel. So you have to experiment with how much space you want there and what feels good. But we're also going to shorten this up a little bit. So I would shorten it up 6-8 inches, maybe a foot. So you're actually going to have a foot here and a foot here. And then the other thing, well, we'll do that. No, we'll do that at the same time because it's super related, is you're ending up with your toe a little bit forward. So we would call this open. Your back leg looks pretty darn good. You've got this little dip in your knee. We want to see that same dip in your front leg as well. So we'd rather see your front leg like this, which is going to necessitate turning your toe to face the other way. So this is a concept that Seabass22, who's been coaching online since I was a wee lad, has been harping on for a long time. And there's a disc golf course review forum thread on it that's titled "Shift from Behind You." That is kind of the most ambiguous phrase the human language could possibly come up with. But let's go over real quick what that means. So we're going to change your offset and your plant toe, and we're going to flip to demo mode and go over that. So offset, if I'm thrown away from the camera, you're ending up this foot pretty square, and then your front foot, so I'll angle a little bit, your front foot is landing, toes open a little bit. So if I'm sideways, this foot is square, and this one is toes open. So when this is open, you can't do the things you need to do because your hip isn't in the right position. So all you can really do is drift over your plant, which the whole point of this foot is to stop the forward progress of your front hip. The whole purpose of the brace foot and the brace leg is to stop the forward momentum and the forward progress of your front hip, so that all of the momentum in your rear hip and the rest of your body is forced to rotate around this static, well, dynamically resisting, but otherwise static post. So it's like pole vaulting, right? Where you're going to run, jam your stick in the ground, and then bend it and fly forward, except our stick doesn't bend and we don't want to bounce off of it. We want to stop behind it and then rotate around it, all while this foot is completely de-weighted because we're dynamically stopping on the front leg. And then the follow through carries you back up to balance and rotates your foot around. That's a lot. If that doesn't make sense, ask questions, and I'm happy to spend more time filling in on that stuff. But if you don't offset your feet, so if you're here, and especially if you're toe forward, toe open, you can't contain. You could, like I've seen people do it, but it's really awkward. You're not set up in an optimal position to contain anything, and you're just going to come over it and take a step forward. So if you shift from behind with an offset, so instead of my feet flat in line here, I'm going to offset so that I'm toe to heel, or even maybe I have some space between my toe and my heel. So I'm not necessarily just lined up heel to toe, but I might even have a little bit more space. Joel Freeman put out a video recently about this, talking about your window, this being your window, the space between your legs that you can see from behind the T-pad. So you're adding an offset, and then in addition to adding an offset, you're going to toe back a little bit. So now all of a sudden, instead of shifting your weight here and the weight wanting to go into your toe, which is not helpful for what we're trying to do, you're going to get your toe down and your heel is going to land closer to the target. So now your glute is going to be a lot more engaged. Your heel is going to be grounded, which means you have a better line of force through your shin bones and your femur into your hip, which is the whole point. We're pressing on the ground to stop this joint so that everything else can rotate around it, and then the toe will release and everything will come through on a follow through. So that is the key. This is the only thing that will get you past 300 to 350 and beyond. You've got to figure out how to get your front leg closed. It's very hard to do. So I would suggest doing a lot of footwork, just going through your throw of momentum step, initial step, X step, toe, heel forward, and just get that to work. Because a lot of times you'll think you're doing it right, but then you look at film and it's absolutely not correct, and you're doing the same thing you've been doing the whole time. So that's offset and plant toe, and we can get more into the theory of that. I just want to get you the ideas and have you play with them, and then we'll see where we need to add more theory and more understanding so that everything makes sense. But just doing an info dump for now. So then next, the shoulder shrug thing. So let's take a quick look at that, and then we'll go over how the offset and the brace adjustment will help fix that. So your shoulder is just a little bit high. I'm not sure why. Almost everyone does this. It just feels, I guess I forget what muscle that is on the top of your shoulder, but you're just using that one too much because it feels like you're pulling the disc up. I don't know. I don't quite understand why everyone does that, but everyone does it, including myself. And it's very hard to stop doing. But the way to stop doing it is getting on a hyzer tilt and getting your off arm more involved so that everything is more centered. So then we'll lump these two together too. So your off arm is doing a good job of staying neutral, and that's about all it's doing. So it's kind of close to your rib cage, and it kind of stays close to your rib cage, and it looks kind of tense. So nothing wrong with that. It's not in your way. It's not slowing you down, but it could be speeding you up. So let's take a look at how we can change that. So shoulder shrug will just kind of take care of itself when we address everything else and you get more loose and relaxed. And the off arm will do an active drill for. That's a kind of a calibration. This is new. I haven't put it on the channel yet, so it's just for you. We can debut it and see if you like it and give me some feedback, and then I'll throw it up on the channel if it seems useful to you. Okay, so shoulder shrug, it just happens. Like, we're humans. We want to do a thing, and so we tense up the stuff, and it doesn't help, right? So what we would rather see is loose shoulders that are down and back, and then actually this is going to project forward. So when I'm trying to get into a deep pocket, having more space here by letting your shoulder blade drift out and your elbow poke forward even more, well, sideways on the T-pad, I guess, can be helpful. And then retracting that as you pull through. But again, more advanced concept. Don't worry about that yet. But that's a more productive thing for your shoulder to be doing instead of hunching, right? So just down and relaxed is better for now than hunched. But another thing that's really going to help the shoulder shrug is getting on a hyzer tilt. So part of this offset is it allows you to have your hips on a better plane. So if my hips are in line and I rotate, everything's going to stay pretty flat. If I come onto this offset, now when I reach back, I'm naturally on a hyzer. So this is a hyzer, right? So if I was going to throw an hyzer, I would want to be the other way, where my front hip is higher and I come over the top like this. But with this offset, reaching into a hyzer, so this angle would be a hyzer, then I pull through at center, everything's flat again. And then as I come to follow through, I'm still on this hyzer plane, but it's switched sides. My high side was my low side. So that your hips being on this plane and rotating on this plane, and your shoulders being on that same plane and rotating on that plane, that's what gives you more power. And the reason a hyzer angle works better is because it allows your rotation to this hip posts up and this hip is actually dropping down under. So look at a still of Simon Lizotte throwing, and he almost like his hip socket is here, and his other hip socket ends up like way below that. It's like he's hanging his rear hip socket below his front hip socket. And that also gets the rear leg into a counterweight position. There's 2 videos on the channel about hyzer tilt. Watch those ones if you want more on that. So, but that hyzer plane gets rid of the shoulder shrug, because now instead of this shoulder being up here trying to do all the things, it can just swing down and then stay down and come up on the follow through. So it gives your shoulder this nice elephant trunk swing thing to do, which helps keep your shoulder down and relaxed and open and full of space. So those are all good things. So that's the shoulder shrug. You don't think about that actively. It'll just happen as we clean up other areas of your form. So let's talk about the off arm. Your off arm stays here and you do your thing. It's neutral, that's fine. If you want to ignore the off arm and leave it there for now, that's totally fine. But I would suggest playing with this drill for a solid practice session and seeing if it feels like something you can integrate now quickly before we make all these other changes, because it might be easier to add it now and get more reps in practicing with an off arm. So basically what we want the off arm to do is, I usually compare it to the rear leg, but in the interest of time, let's skip that and we'll just give you an isolated view of the rear arm. So the rear arm, its job is to pull in tight at the right time. So if you're spinning on a merry-go-round and you pull, or ice skating, whatever, skateboarding, sport of your choice, anything rotational, and you pull everything into center while you're spinning, you're going to rotate faster. And then if you open everything up, you're going to rotate slower. So we actually use that effect on purpose during our throw. So here, we're bringing the off arm in. You can bring it in like Paul Macbeth, or you can shoot it down like Drew Gibson. And I should find female players that do the same thing so I can stop referencing dudes all the time. But the motions are the same, right? So you can do either one of those, whichever one feels natural, just swinging in, more like a Paul Macbeth style, or shooting down like Drew Gibson. The shoot down is easier for me to do mentally, but try them both, see what works. But all you're doing is you're getting everything in tight so you can spin quicker, and then what actually slows you down is your arm coming out, and then this one floats up and slows you back down. So you're going from slow to fast to slow. That's all the off arm has to do. It's just trying to get ahead of the curve and get everything pulled in so that it's not slowing you down. If I try to throw here, this is going to drag and stop my shoulder from turning. But if I can get my arm inside of that shoulder rotation, then I can, boom, rotate really quick, and then it'll come and drift up on its own. So how do we get there? The easiest way I've found to get people to think about this, well, there's two ideas. So first, just conceptually, is a 4-beat. So the first beat is 1, you float this hand up. 2, you hit peak reach back, and this starts down if you want to get technical. So 1, 2, 3, I'm going to pull into my pocket, and my rear hand is going to shoot down, trying to get to my right pocket. And then 4, this is going to I'm going to squeeze my back together, my shoulder blades together, and pop my chest so that everything opens up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you like an academic county thing, do that one more. If you like a feel thing more, which is probably better for most people on average, try this one. So feet shoulder width and a half apart, and then you're just going to swing your arms. So I'm swinging like kind of on an opposed 90-degree angle. So this one's going 45 degrees back, and this one's going 45 degrees back. And you can play with how much you just move your arms, or if you let your weight rock too. Probably better if you let your weight rock, but try both. So I'm just feeling this timing of letting my arms swing totally dead loose. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my left arm so that it changes the timing. So here I'm swinging, everything's in sync. I'm going to pick up and drop. And the pickup and the drop helps pump the right arm faster. So I'm not like pulling, like starting a lawnmower or anything. I'm just dropping the left and feeling how that makes the right want to go faster. So I'm using gravity and the left to pump the right. So once you have a feel for that, it becomes evident how you could use that to your advantage. So try that out, see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, ask questions. Also relevant on my channel, the trebuchet drill, which is kind of the same idea of giving a shove with your offhand to your bicep to get to a deeper pocket and feel what the pull activation that we do want to have should feel like. All right, so how are we doing on time? 1,000,000 hours. Cool, 25 minutes, not bad. Okay, so let's stop there. Again, thank you so much for your willingness to participate in my shenanigans of trying to make people better at this awesome sport. And I hope some of that is useful. Please stay in touch and ask questions. Thank you very much, ma'am. Get out to the field, give it a try.